How the people are doing? So, it's finally time for the review of the S22 Ultra. I must say, really looking forward to this one because there are quite a few interesting thoughts that I've had over the 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks that I've used this phone. So, starting off with the design, as usual, there are a lot of things I really like about this phone's design as such. And there's also this one little thing I absolutely do not like. It's a camera module. Or the lack thereof, because we don't really have a proper module here. It's just the camera lens is just jutting out, and admittedly I'm not exactly the biggest fan here because I think there are two major reasons. Firstly, it's such a huge phone that is otherwise so beautiful that not having a proper camera module, it feels, I think the right word is, incomplete in a way. And secondly, and more importantly, I feel like this is Samsung's flagship we're talking about, and Samsung has made some very beautiful looking smartphones in recent years. The S21 Ultra is a testament to that, and compared to that alone, I would say that this feels out of place in a manner of speaking. I know that there are gonna be some people who actually prefer the simplistic look here. It's it stays out of the way, it doesn't really look too crazy or too boisterous, and maybe that's something quite a few people like. I'm not entirely certain, but I can tell you right now my thoughts on it are not positive, to say the least. But despite the very simple camera module, I would say the rest of the design, it sort of makes up for it, because unlike, I would say, most flagships out there, this square off look, it gives a very recognizable feel to it. You look at this out there and it's Samsung's best flagship right there. We also have very few bezels up front and a punch hole design, which is safe. It's not the most crazy design, but it's very safe and it works. So for now, I think this is a safe design that goes a little too safe on the camera module. I think it's fine. It's not the best out there, but it's far from the worst. We have seen much worse designs. Remember the S20 Ultra? I think it's satisfactory. But the display, now that is very commendable on the S22 Ultra, as you'd expect. It's Samsung. They make the best AMOLED displays, for the most part, the best AMOLED displays on the market. And this time around, yep, they nailed it. They have really good colors, they have a beautiful OLED screen, and it gets brighter than ever. I think that is the biggest upgrade that we have here. It's around 1700 nits peak brightness now, which is pretty huge. It's 200 nits higher than last year, and yes, I can visibly see the extra bit of brightness. When you're playing HDR content, when you're out in the sun, I took a lot of photos when I was out in the sun, and definitely visibility was a very strong point on the S22 Ultra. And of course, it has everything else you'd expect. You see 120Hz, variable 120 at that, so you get the battery efficiency. We got the 1440p, so yes, you have the beautiful sharpness, you have the smoothness, and it is very fluid. Along with that, we have amazing HDR and HDR10+, some of the best looking content consumption on this phone too. There's really not much to complain here. We do not have 10-bit color and we do not have Dolby Vision. These two are literally the only things that's missing, and you hardly miss it because of just how good the display is by itself. And this display is probably going to end up being one of the, if not the best display for 2022. We'll find out, of course, but it is at a very good position right now. But now let's talk about performance, because this is always kind of controversial because we have an Exynos version and a Snapdragon variant. We all know how that goes. Usually what happens is that the Snapdragon variant has better graphical performance, so technically better gaming. Now this one, the Exynos variants, they tend to outperform slightly in CPU, but they also have some heating efficiency problems and so on and so forth. The difference is there. Definitely, I think Snapdragon variants are slightly better, but obviously I haven't used them. But given that that's the general opinion, I think I kind of agree with it as well. But I doubt you're gonna see any major differences in real world use case. At least that's how I feel, because right after I started using this phone, kind of forgot that I was using the Exynos variant, and that's simply because I didn't notice any major stutters. And when I was using the camera, or especially when I was editing a lot of photos, Lightroom, Snapseed, whatever, and I didn't notice too much heating. And that's a very good sign. If it can handle those tasks, it can handle almost anything you throw at it. Now battery, on the other hand, oh yeah, That's good. That stuff, it's mint, because we have actually had an improvement despite the fact that we don't have any higher capacity. I mean, I'm still impressed that we still have 5000 milliamperes despite the fact that there's an S Pen shoved in there. But even then, the battery efficiency has gone up. Because if I were to say that I can get around 6 to 6.5 hours in medium to heavy usage with the S21 Ultra, that's the one from last year, on this one, this can go between 6.5 to 7. So I think it's a pretty significant upgrade. Like, I could tell you that if I were to not use the camera too much or not edit too many photos in a single day, I could probably go up to 7 to 7.5 hours of screen on time. I mean, I don't use the phone that much, not even close. It's generally gonna end up at 6 to 6.5 hours for most people, and you're gonna actually have quite a fair bit of juice left in the tank. Now, that said, I mean, I'm glad that we have a beautiful upgrade to the battery. No problems there, but I think Samsung still needs to upgrade the standby time, because if you leave the S22 Ultra just like that overnight, I'd say it would seep a lot of battery just out right there. But despite that, I still think that we can get fantastic battery from this one, and the efficiency upgrades are most welcome. Now then, let us get to the meat of the matter. Of course, these are the cameras that I'm talking about, and I must say, despite, being very similar to what we had last year, at least hardware-wise, it's still a very interesting camera to test out. I mean, you will see all of that in the photography comparisons that I've already done. You can check them out using the link in the description. But basically, I have a very good idea of how photography really stacks up against other cameras that we have. But for videos, I haven't really made the videography comparisons yet, so I cannot give you my finalist opinion, obviously. But I did take a few videos, and, far as I can tell, it's very similar to what we had last year, which is not a bad thing. I'm pretty sure there are some quality improvements in general. We'll know when we make the video comparisons. But for now, I can tell you, it's pretty good. It's probably gonna end up being, one of the best videography cameras among Android smartphones, and it's probably still not going to beat the iPhone. I mean, we didn't really expect it would, now did we? Anyways, on the photography side of things, this is where it really gets interesting, of course. Despite the fact that we have nothing new, in terms of sensors or anything like that, but, there are some inconsistency issues here. Colors can turn out to be very wonky. I mean, you can check out the camera comparisons. Even the samples I'm showing you right now, they do have some weird colors, and you might find this surprising. Trust me, I did too, because it was weird. Sometimes warm light is handled really well by the S22. Other times, you can get, crazy magenta cast. Maybe it just leaks into the skin as well. And what I'm trying to say is there is some optimization that's needed. And if anything, if you were to go by the record of the S21 Ultra from last year, I would say the S22 should. And I'm pretty sure that would take the S22's cameras, at least in photos, from being pretty damn good to just amazing. And there's a fair chance that would happen. But of course, take all of this with a grain of salt. I'm not really sure if the updates are actually gonna come or not, but I'm really hoping they will. Now, I would actually consider that this camera is a jack of all trades, in a manner of speaking, and it's not a bad thing. It's actually kind of a compliment, because from a flagship, you'd want it to basically be capable of handling various situations that you throw at it. And this one's camera does basically just that. So what I'm trying to say is we have the versatility. So yes, 3x zoom, 10x zoom, it's best in class. Some of the best zoom that you can get in any smartphone thus far, other than some Huawei phones, I guess, but they have their own problems. There is, of course, the overall color science, which actually works out really well most of the time. It's not perfect. There are gonna be some situations where it screws up, but in most situations, and I'm really trying to stress on the word most, you're gonna get a very nice and usable result. And I think that's what makes this one so good for photography, because there's always going to be variable lighting, and maybe it's a backlit situation and so on and so forth. And in those cases, I would really like a camera that can handle most of the situations really well, like the S22 Ultra, rather than having one camera that can handle just one or two of those situations exceptionally well. So that is how I feel the S22 Ultra is, or could be considered, a jack of all trades in a very good way. So those are my basic thoughts. There are obviously areas where the S22 Ultra needs to improve. There's a magenta tint issue, and I remember the X70 Pro Plus comparison had some crazy magenta with night mode portraits. But yeah, those things, I feel those can be fixed with software updates, so I'm not entirely just demeaning the S22 Ultra yet. I'll be doing a long-term review soon enough, and if those problems are not fixed at that point, then we can talk about them being real issues. But anyways, that's my take on the camera. It's really good, obviously, no doubt about it. And oh yeah, one more problem actually. The high resolution modes are not working properly on the S22 at this very point. It doesn't turn out to be very sharp. The results are not exactly as good as you'd expect, as detailed as you'd expect them to be, so keep that in mind as well. I'm pretty sure that one's getting patched no matter what. Like, high resolution was better on the S21 Ultra compared to the S22, so I doubt that issue is going to persist. So I think, keeping all of that in mind, this is a flagship level camera and it fulfills that criteria fairly well enough. Now, finally, let's talk about the software and the S Pen. The S Pen is, after all, the biggest upgrade that the S22 Ultra has compared to last year's S21 Ultra. I mean, yes, you could use the S Pen with S21 Ultra, but you couldn't exactly shove it in there, now could you? So yeah, the S Pen, it's about as good as you would expect it to be. It's actually better with the latency. I think it's down at 2.8 milliseconds now. Honestly, I cannot tell much difference compared to last year, but despite that, I think it's just fantastic. You can take down notes, you can jot down a list. I don't use the first two functions much because I'm not a very organized person, but I can tell you that I do use the S Pen a lot for photo editing and those masking, the text masks that you see in a lot of my comparison thumbnails. Everything is done on the S22 Ultra. And there's also the sketching side of things. I'm an artist, so for me that is an incredible feature. So yeah, the S Pen, you can take it or leave it. It's not exactly getting in your way, it's just in there, and if you find a situation where you want to use it, you have it. And this is a feature that is not available in any other smartphone or any other flagship from any other company so far. It's a unique feature, which is what makes the S22 Ultra so worthwhile in my opinion. Now then, software, obviously there's not really much to talk about here. We all know how good the S22 Ultra software is. It's One UI, and I think it's my favorite software thus far, compared to anything like Oxygen OS, stock Android. I think Samsung's take on UI is just better because it gives a very good balance between what I would consider minimal amount of bloatware and customization. Because customization on this thing, man, it can get crazy because we have good luck here and we all know how good luck can be. There's a lot of good in there. But my point is that bunch of customizations, very fluid animations, far as I've seen, and we also have the Google feed, which is just amazing, right? So yeah, I like it. I did change up the icons. Obviously, I just cannot stand those huge squircle icons. They just look childish in a manner of speaking, I guess. But we can change them very easily. This is a free icon pack that I downloaded. It took me maybe 15 seconds to do it. So yeah, that's hardly a grievance. With all that said, I think the real question we should be asking is not whether or not the S22 Ultra is worth it. I mean, it is. I think it is absolutely worth the flagship price tag. I mean, it could be better. I mean, every smartphone could be better. But, for what we're getting here, I think it's good enough for the price. It's steep, obviously, but if, it fulfills your requirements, this is a very good smartphone. I'm really liking it. I'm probably gonna end up using this one, just like I ended up using the S21 Ultra the entirety of last year. This is probably gonna be my main device for this year as well, unless maybe some other smartphone ends up surprising me. That could happen. But, for now at least, for the foreseeable future, this seems like it's going to be my daily driver. And well, I'm going to recommend this to anyone who would like a Samsung flagship and who wants to experience what an S Pen has to offer and so on and so forth. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be seeing you guys later. Cheers.